So you've decided you'd be fine in Victorian London. I get it. You've seen the photos. Big hats, little mustaches, everyone standing perfectly still because the camera needed 9 seconds and blinking was considered a personality flaw. It looks classy. It looks like a place where a man could own a pocket watch and be respected. And you figure, hey, you're tough. You've been camping. You once went 11 hours without Wi-Fi and only cried twice. Here's the thing. Victorian London was the largest, richest, most advanced city in the history of the world up to that point. Gaslighting, railways, a postal service that could get a letter across town in a couple of hours, which is frankly better than what I'm working with. It also could not figure out where to put the poop, and that is going to be a recurring theme. So let's start with breathing. You step off the time machine, you take a nice, deep breath of crisp, historical air, and congratulations, you have just inhaled a building. Victorian London ran on coal. Every house, every factory, every train. 2 million people burning coal in a valley with a river in it. The smoke did not go anywhere. It sat on the city like a wet blanket on a birthday cake. They called the fogs London particulars, and they came in colors. Yellow, brown, occasionally a festive greenish black for the holidays. The fog got so thick that people got lost on streets they had lived on their entire lives. Traffic stopped. Pedestrians walked directly into the Thames, which we will get to, and you are not going to like it. During the worst fogs, the death rate in the city measurably spiked, because a lot of Victorian lungs were already held together with hope and bronchitis. Then came the summer of 1858. London got hot, and the Thames, the river running directly past Parliament, had by that point become, in technical terms, a soup. They called it the Great Stink. Curtains soaked in lime were hung in the windows of the Houses of Parliament. Politicians fled the chamber mid-sentence. There was serious discussion about relocating the entire government somewhere upwind, like cowards. You know what finally convinced Britain to build a modern sewer system? Not the thousands of dead, not decades of doctors begging. It was rich men being mildly inconvenienced by a smell, which is honestly the most historically accurate thing I will say all video. That's death number 1, by the way. Your lungs. Quietly. Over about 4 years. Now, you're thirsty. Understandable. Here's your problem. London's drinking water came from the Thames. London's sewage also went into the Thames. Some water companies were drawing their supply downstream of the outfalls, which means, and I want you to really sit with this, people were paying money for a beverage that was, in a very real sense, previously owned. Enter cholera. Cholera does not ease you into it. Cholera is a disease with a work ethic. You can be healthy at breakfast and dead by dinner, having lost a catastrophic amount of fluid from every available exit. Tens of thousands of Londoners died across multiple outbreaks. And the medical establishment's explanation for all of this was that disease came from bad smells. So their brilliant solution was to get the waste out of the houses and dump it into the river. Problem solved. The smell is gone. The smell was never the problem. The problem was that you were drinking it. Then, in 1854, a doctor named John Snow did something radical. He made a map. He plotted every cholera death around Soho, and they all clustered around a single water pump on Broad Street. He got the handle removed, and the cases collapsed. He was largely dismissed at the time because he was correct, and that is not how this works. This is also why everyone drank beer, including children. Weak stuff, small beer. But the reason your average Victorian 9-year-old was sipping ale at lunch is that fermentation is safer than the tap. Their toddlers had a better bar tab than I do. Death number 2. 1 glass of water. That's it. That's the entire death. All right. You need money. You've got no references, no skills anyone recognizes, and a deeply suspicious accent. So let's look at the entry-level positions. You could be a mudlark, wading through Thames mud at low tide looking for scrap metal, coal, and rope to sell. Barefoot. In the mud, we just spent 5 minutes discussing. Mostly children did this. Too glamorous? Then you're a pure finder. You collect dog waste off the streets and sell it to the tanneries, where it was used to treat leather. And they called it pure, because Victorians were incapable of describing anything honestly. That is not a job title, that is a hostage note. Or you could go work in a match factory, dipping matches in white phosphorus, which caused a condition called phossy jaw, where the bone in your jaw slowly died and, in the dark, could actually glow. The match girls went on strike over it in 1888 and won, which is a genuine bright spot in a story about your face becoming a nightlight. That's death number 3. Occupational, slowly, while being called pure. Now, say you get sick, or injured, or you simply look unwell and somebody helpful intervenes. Early in the era, surgery happened without anesthesia. Ether only reached Britain in 1846, so a surgeon's most valued professional skill was speed. Robert Liston, London's most famous operator, could take a leg off in about 2.5 minutes. Spectators timed him, with watches, like a sport. Nobody was washing anything. Surgeons wore the same coat for years, and a stiff, blood-blackened coat was considered a sign of experience. Germ theory hadn't landed yet, so even a survivable operation had a solid chance of killing you afterward through infection, which they would politely file under "the patient did not thrive." And the pharmacy is worse. Mercury was medicine. Arsenic was medicine. Women ate arsenic wafers for a fashionably pale complexion, which does work because that is what dying looks like. But the big one is laudanum. Opium dissolved in alcohol, sold everywhere, no prescription, cheaper than gin. Got a cough? Laudanum. Got anxiety? Laudanum. Got a baby? Also laudanum. There were opium-based syrups marketed for quieting infants. They worked very well. They also killed a horrifying number of children, and it took decades of campaigning to regulate this stuff. Victorian parenting advice was essentially, have you tried sedating it? Death number 4. Whatever was wrong with you, plus the treatment, plus the coat. So you've made it home. You're safe now. Absolutely not. Look at that lovely green wallpaper, that vivid, cheerful emerald the Victorians could not get enough of. That pigment is copper arsenite. That is arsenic on your wall, flaking gently into the air of a sealed, badly ventilated room. There were documented cases of children sickening in green bedrooms, and manufacturers spent years insisting it was perfectly fine because it was profitable, and therefore fine. Meanwhile, fashion. The crinoline, that enormous hooped skirt, turned every woman in Britain into a highly flammable belle in a house lit entirely by open flame. Deaths from crinoline fires ran into the thousands across the era. 2 of Oscar Wilde's half-sisters died that way, at a party in 1871. And the hats. Felt hats were made using mercury, and the fumes wrecked the nervous systems of the men making them. Tremors, paranoia, slurred speech. That is the actual origin of Mad as a Hatter. It wasn't whimsy, it was an industrial injury with a nickname. Every single thing in this house is beautiful, and all of it wants you dead. It's like living inside a very polite trap. Death number 5. Decor. Here's the part that isn't funny, and then I'll let you go. In the worst districts, official reports in the 1840s put the average age of death for laboring families in the teens or low 20s. That number is dragged down brutally by infant mortality. In some slums, roughly 1 in 4 children didn't reach their 5th birthday. Plenty of adults did live to old age, but your odds depended almost entirely on which street you were born on, and that was the whole point of the system. So, could you survive Victorian London? Sure. Bring your own water, your own doctor, your own wallpaper, and enough money to live upwind of everybody else. That is not a survival strategy. That is just being rich in any century. The Victorians did eventually build the sewers, clean the water, regulate the factories, and put doctors in charge of public health, which is why the numbers in this video are numbers and not your Tuesday. Anyway, drink your tap water tonight. It's a miracle, and nobody ever thanks it.